The mind is the imagination of the heart. The heart is the imagination of the breath. The breath is the imagination of consciousness. And consciousness is the imagination of an unknowable, eternal, all-loving reality only known as you. Therefore, you are an eternal, all-knowing, all-loving reality that is exploring its own infinite potential throughout a sea of consciousness expressed through the endless simultaneous lifetimes of one single breath that animates itself in the form of an innocent heart that plays in the imagination of the one eternal mind. It's all one. That's from Matt Kahn.
Thank you, Charlie.
Okay, we're on another episode, you guys. Welcome back. We are Ron Vrooman and my friend John Adams, and I'm Mary Trudell. Hi, everybody. We tried to get some really pertinent information out yesterday, but for whatever reason, it didn't record properly, and it just kicked us all off the call. So we're going to pick up where we left off yesterday, and we're going to go ahead and have you, John Adams, explain what you did down there on South Carolina with your, what was it, Tim Turner group?
Yeah, it was Republic of the United States of America through
Yeah.
leadership
Okay, so
of
go
Tim
ahead
Turner.
and I hate to have to do that again. I mean, we did it so well yesterday, but you know what? We're going to have to do it again. So,
Yeah, understand.
okay, well, thank you for re-describing what it was in South Carolina that you guys had attempted to do. And I think you said back in 2010, 2000.
Yeah, it was 2010. A group came together after tea parties had flourished all over this night, America. And from that came a group called Guardians of the Free Republic, which then in turn actually turned into Republic of the United States of America, which has a website on the web. Not promoting them necessarily, but that's what happened in 2010. Then a state, South Carolina had formed a statewide grand jury so that they could move forward. All documents were done. Many hours were put in to do everything. All notices sent out, etc. About probably 6 months before that, the governors of all 50 states in the United States court were served a notice, and it scared them pretty good. It went on the news. It picked the fake news picked it up. But anyway, so we went forward. People were elected to one Supreme Court for the state. We had two assemblies, two counties that assembled, and each one had a jury, and they formed their assembly. Chairmen, et cetera, were elected, and for each, and all were set up correctly. We had a state house and a senate, and anyway, one thing I forgot yesterday to tell you was in November of 2010, we were called to Utah. And money was gathered to send me out as a representative from South Carolina to go through. It was about a day and a half. We were locked in an undisclosed location to the public, guarded, and a group of people were picked to write what I think is called Declaration of Intent, and it's on the Republic of the United States of America website, and you can probably still see my name signed out there. So all 50 states were represented, I'm fairly sure. And that was done. And we were told not to talk about it because they had to deliver it to certain people. So when I came back, well, people got mad at me because I was sworn to secrecy, not to tell. And it really upset me because I wanted to share what had been done. It was basically writing the freedoms back to the people from the sky to the sea and on the land. And it was a great document. Anyway, after that, we it kind of happenstance, but a national grand jury was called to Atlanta, Georgia in January of 2011. and I helped coordinate it as a project coordinator. All but 3 states showed. Everybody came on their own dime. Nobody paid for it. They came. They brought a substitute with them for the jury, but when it was time for the jury to hear complaints or facts about the de facto government, 2 men that spoke, Jim Wright and a guy named Ken Cousins. I don't know if you know that name, Ron. And they both were either bought off or told not to do what they were told to do because they did not speak on the subject they were brought there to do. And it made me very upset because I worked hard to put that together.
Yeah.
And to make a long story short, I left before the whole weekend was out, but they continued to meet about other stuff. But as time went along, other things happened, and basically Tim Turner was holding seminars across the nation, and I talked to people and they said, I don't know what's wrong with him. He seems like he's always on the run or he's hiding. I said, what are you talking about? Next thing I know, he was picked up and now he's locked up for fraud or what have you in a prison, in the federal prison system, I think.
What happened?
I guess in other words, he was selling something that the de facto wouldn't let work. And if you're selling something that's not working, they use that to catch him, saying you're frauding people. They did that to a lot of people in 2010, not just him.
Interesting. Yeah, you were kind of describing yesterday how it seemed like agents and infiltrators, PSYOP agents that were like.
Oh yeah, there were always somebody trying to infiltrate to tear it apart, and because we were going to do our local jury to stop going to the courts locally, and
local grand jury.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
And so we just heard that Tim, the governor of our state, acting governor of the republic, re-inhabited, said that Tim Turner called and said, "Don't do that yet. It's not time." I'm like, "What?"
So,
next thing I know, that the whole thing started falling apart.
Not to interrupt, John, but when you say your state, you mean the original state of South Carolina, like Little S state? So
I'm sorry, yes.
So because man has the right of self-determination, and that's even written in the law of nations, we all have the right of self-determination. I just want to kind of explain it to the people. You have the right of self-determination after you reach the age of majority, even probably before. I think even when you're like 12, you're able to say, I want to live with my mom or I want to live with my dad. So you have that right. So if you want to be dual citizen of, say, like Canada, oh wait, Canada's under the Articles of Confederation, this perpetual union under Article 11, never mind. If you want to be like, say, dual citizenship, like say, let's say, I don't know, Australia and America, you can do that through your right of self-determination. So when you say the people of our state of South Carolina, Little S state, that would mean that you all are reconvening and you're standing with the original Constitution, the original Constitution of South Carolina, not the revised version of the Constitution that these attorneys came in and effectively revised and turned into the South Carolina into state of South Carolina de facto, right?
Right, that is correct.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry, I just want to explain that.
From that, I mean, it is obviously South Carolina, but I grew up in North Carolina, but have spent most of my life in South Carolina. Long story short, things started falling apart because fraud was happening, or somebody would create a issue, and how it didn't take much to start pulling it apart. But most of it was dishonesty, and that's what you really have to stay on the lookout for to try to make it go away real quick, and but thoroughly, honestly.
Yeah.
But that's what happened, long and short, and it never stayed together. But the Republic of the United States of America is still on the web, and I think they still have a presence within their, I will call it, I guess, I don't mean it bad, organization at this point, but there's where it lies.
So this actually has been attempted before, is what John Adams is trying to tell everybody. Now that was the 50 states, which Ron here is able to disseminate that actually, realistically, there were only 33 states admitted into this union of the original jurisdiction of the United States of America. So when we're talking about repopulating the republic, we're talking about repopulating the original 33 states within the republic. Isn't that right, Ron? Okay, just to
Yep.
make a complete distinction for people that don't really realize that the state of, like the state of, let's say, Nevada, which was never recognized as a territory, and the state of Nevada was only created by way of executive order by a corporation, which if you go to the site, you'll look and see the corporation. Ron, I posted the United States Corporation that they redid in 1925 for the people. So go ahead, Ron, let's have you go ahead and talk about what that would look like, bringing 2/3 of the original 33 states back and re-attempting to do something like this. And as John Mark just said, we don't need to re-notify everybody of all 50 governors of all 50 states, because as John just told you, all of the governors of all the states have all already been notified. So go ahead, Ron.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good to see you again, John.
You too.
When we formed our Jural Assembly, I was looking around on how to do that. The first thing we did was we formed a safety committee, like from National Liberty Alliance. We knew we had to assemble, but we didn't know how or where. How do you do that? Nobody's telling anybody.
Right.
The folks from the Republic, when that fell apart, I mean, a lot of people really got scared.
Yeah.
And a lot of people didn't want to be anything to do with it.
That's right.
One of the guys that was with us when we started our Jural Assembly here on Oregon, named Roger Tabb, he was with the Republic and he was in Atlanta. I'm positive of that.
Okay.
And anyhow, the Jural Assembly I got hooked up with Roger and so forth, we affiliated with Jim Wright, as we figured that the way he was going looked like the proper way to us from our point of view. And Jim Wright started making mistakes right off the bat,
Mhm.
you know, and nobody was calling him on the mistakes. And he was writing paper that you could read it and it was wrong. And he wouldn't change it. And so I wouldn't have anything more to do with him. But our Jural Assembly stayed affiliated with Jim Wright's group. And he had 42 or 48 states assembled and ready to go, each with at least 5 people and yada, yada, yada. But none of them were doing the work on their state.
That's right.
Such as making a grand jury, and such as making a trial jury, and such as having a court of record. They weren't doing any of that stuff.
Yep.
They were talking about setting up a Department of Health and Department of Banking and all of that. None of that was happening on any of the states, and they were looking to me like they were driving a top down instead of a bottom up kind of an organization.
Right.
And so one of our 2 representatives to that organization said, I don't want anything to do with them anymore, like me. And he stepped aside and we put another guy in. And then Roger, who was in it, he died, and we left with one guy in it. And he's still there. He goes to listen to their meetings once in a while. He doesn't participate, but he keeps an ear in for us. and they're just wrong.
Right.
And that guy David Strait, he's wrong too.
Yeah.
And I don't people. Um,
Well, I
we,
know personally
yeah,
from personal experience that David Strait is full of it. He's made promises he doesn't keep. He's asked me to do work for him to do, oh, well, just do this. I spent a month and a half writing a brief, and then he takes all of my information and uses it and sells it to people. It's like, are you freaking kidding me, man? You know, isn't
yes,
that right, John?
Yeah. It is definitely right.
It's totally true. Um,
yes,
he's full of it.
yes.
And he's
Uh,
charging people to be some guru to give him remedy, but that will never work. It will
yes,
never work. And now he's doubled up with I think he's trying to double up with Anna von Reich, you know, of the Fourth Reich, the
they.
woman with the blood oath of the Holy See. Listen, if we could just get all these people, if we could get all these different people from all these different groups and bring them together to assemble in a right way. We're not trying to buy we're standing in status. We're not trying to tell you to change anything. We're trying to tell you to come together and assemble people. You know, that's what we're trying to do. If we could just gather all these different people from all these different places and bring them together, we would have a standing chance at really revamping this republic. You know, that's what we're trying to do here. And we're not trying to buy your votes with $1,000 of gold. And we're not trying to like revamp the republic in some corporate way or anything like that. This is the real deal, salt of the earth people trying to come together and repopulate these original jurisdiction and republic states. Go ahead, Ron. Oh, you're mute. You're on mute, Ron.
Okay, I'm
There you
sorry.
go. No, it's
I
okay.
love it. I love it when you're running a rant down. It
You're
sounds really
damn
good.
right, man. Tell it
Yeah.
like it is. Tell it like it is, Trudell. That's my nickname. Go ahead.
What we're trying to do here is not reinvent the wheel, but just go back to when the wheel was broken and fix it. And then from then on, we just redo everything correct and properly in my mind.
That's right.
So we think that the wheel was broke when South Carolina left the Union. Uh, the Union was a perpetual union.
Right.
And
Can't be broken.
we lost it. It was broken. But that wasn't the first time it was broken. It was broken by Rhode Island and Providence Plantation in 1789 because they didn't even go to Washington's inauguration. They stayed home. They did not ratify. So they broke it, but they fixed it and we went on. So,
Well, weren't there 12 presidents prior to Washington? Washington was not the first president of the United States of America. I think he was the 13th, wasn't he?
well, no, there's the wordplay for you.
Hmm.
They invented the United States in the Constitution. That's where it was invented. The United States of America, a confederation and perpetual union of the several states,
Right.
they did that.
Right.
They invented the United States, and the United States of Washington, District of Columbia, is located in a 10-mile square that's not a 10-mile square anymore. But that's where the United States is. It's located right there.
Right.
And it was invented by uh, North Carolina and all of the several states when there was only 13.
Right.
Well, I remember when Declaration of Independence was ordained alongside of the original Constitution, it said the Constitution for these United States of America. That was when Philadelphia was the nation's capital.
Small U.
Right, that was when Philadelphia was the nation's capital.
Yeah, but there was a small U in that document.
Right. I'm trying to find that document, by the way. I got everybody. Hey, man, I know they burned the libraries of Alexandria down in 1812. The bar did that after the people. The last thing the 13 colonies ratified was the maybe it was the 33. It was the titles of nobility. No titles of nobility could hold public office, which was Lincoln was. He was an attorney. Out of land of Lincoln, that was Illinois right there. That's where the American Bar Association was first started. Go ahead.
Lincoln was an attorney, but he was not an esquire. Nobody has been able to prove Lincoln was an esquire.
Yeah, but
being an attorney, being a lawyer, being somebody studied in law.
No. Lawyer means learned in law. An attorney, I believe, is an esquire. Attorney is esquire.
No. It's not.
Lawyer is learned in law.
Yes, and you can be a lawyer or an attorney, and you don't have to be a member of the bar. Okay, the bar is out of London, the British Accreditation Registry.
Right, but they also started an association in Illinois, right, in America.
Yes, they started them. There's one in Oregon too, but if you go read the documents, the Bar Association of Illinois was founded after Lincoln was already dead. I had this same argument with Anna von Wright. She was trying to pin the Esquire tag on Lincoln, and it doesn't fit. He was an attorney. He actually did read law. He was conferred his right to practice law in Illinois by 2 judges. He was not a member of the bar.
Well, from my reading, Ron, attorney is the same as esquire. Lawyer is separate. It means learned in law. From what I understand, Lincoln was an attorney, and he could not hold a public office because he was an attorney.
Okay.
Well, that's where we differ. That's okay.
Yeah, we differ there.
We differ. This is the beauty of trying to hash this out to see what's up, because we know darn right well if you're an attorney or an esquire or a lord or Mr. or have any title at all of nobility, you cannot hold a public office. So,
I agree with that wholeheartedly. However, when you get your degree of graduation from your law school and you take it to your state's bar, Oregon State Bar, and you say, I graduated, they say, well, good. Would you like to be, if your school's graduation meets their requirements, for example, would you like to be a JD, a Juris Doctor, or would you like to be an Esquire? The Oregon State Bar confers.
Either just answered my question. Bar, British Accredited Registry is British Accredited Registry. Bar out of the Temple Bar. The Temple Bar has a place over there in Alexandria, Virginia. I believe it's 120 Wall Street, Alexandria, Virginia. So, they're effectively doing business right here on American soil through the Virginia company. But we'll save that topic for another day. Let's talk about reconvening the Republic. Go ahead.
Okay, to reconvene the Republic, we have to go to original jurisdiction. When you read Article 3 in the Constitution, it says one Supreme Court. Mm-hmm. That's a small O and a small S and a capital C, which means something. One Supreme Court claiming original jurisdiction. That's what court a man can go into against the state and get remedy in
Mhm.
our constitutional Republican form of government.
Mhm.
No other court can he go into against the state and get remedy.
Mhm.
Okay, so where is that court? And I looked, 18 months I looked. I filed paper into all kinds of courts. Then I found out that there's a law they made called Mookini, Mookini, Mookini 303. You just put it in DuckDuckGo and it comes right up. And you read not just a little ways into it, and it says any court whose name begins with the United States cannot be an Article 3 court.
Mhm. Makes
So
sense.
they renamed all the courts United States Court, and you cannot find an Article 3 court because every court they present you name begins with United States, so by law it cannot be an Article 3 court.
Yeah.
There isn't one.
Yeah, it's interesting that Seventh Amendment, even though the 1871, the United States Constitution is basically paraphrased from the 1787 Constitution because they were masquerading as the original government. They paraphrased everything, except they changed the stylization, if you notice, because when you get into it and it says the several states, they make sure they write a capital S, or is it like this, capital S state, which isn't the several states. The several states is a lower S state. And it's just very interesting. It's all wordplay. They are using stylization against the people's ignorance. And they have been doing this for a very long time.
Yes,
Yeah.
they're doing it right down. This might interest, just a small aside.
Yeah.
There's a building downtown Portland called the Marco Hatfield Federal Building.
Yeah, I've been there.
Okay, nice building, beautiful, well
Yeah, they
done.
just set it ablaze a couple of summers ago. Antifa just set it ablaze. I was there. I saw it. I heard the bombs. It sounded like Vietnam at night listening to that. It was crazy.
It's now all plywood over all the glass,
Yep.
and it has an 8-foot cyclone fence around the entire block. It looks horrible.
Yeah.
Anyhow, that building, when I pulled the title on it and deed and plat map, says that building is owned by United States of America. There is no United States of America. There is only the United States of America as named in the Articles of Confederation and Perpetual Union.
Right.
That's our name.
Right.
And then there is the government service company that they invented and wrote into the Constitution, and that's name is the United States. Any deviation from either one of those names is fraud because there's only two names.
You know, it's interesting. I used to draft articles of incorporate with an attorney for Northern California collectives in Northern California for MMJ, you know, people that wanted to try to protect their crops and things like that against the de facto. So anyway, when I was drafting articles of incorporate, I was effectively writing the bylaws, and we would assign a CEO and a CFO and board members, but the only thing was that these board members had to meet once every 6 months, record their minutes, and record and send it to the Secretary of State. Okay, when the United States drafted their articles of incorporate, they included president, vice president, Senate, House of Representatives, Congress, executive branch, legislative branch, you know, judicial branch. That's therein lies the fraud, because there's no such thing. No articles of incorporate has any of those assignments, and that was them effectively trying to masquerade as the original, the United States of America. And that's what Bill Henshaw meant when he said it. If he had known that Andrew Johnson effectively vetoed that Reconstruction Act, his whole life would have changed, because he would have spent 40, 50 years of his life studying law. And guess who told him about it? I showed him the newspaper of the veto of the Reconstruction Act. He couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my, he's like, yeah. I was like, he's like, what? I said, yeah, bro. So this is a lot of fraud. And if you don't know how to read and write, you wouldn't be able to disseminate the truth from the lies, because it's all in stylization, like your name in all caps versus your given name that your mother and father gave you. Your original God-given Christian appellation, or whatever. So yeah, go ahead, Ron. Oh, you're unmute. There you go.
It's the old man syndrome.
It's okay. We forgive you. Go ahead.
So what we're trying to do here, and this is a little cart before the horse, but to establish the bona fides.
Yeah.
How do you do that? We're looking for how to do it and who's done it, but hasn't been done in a long time. And it's nice John was there at the start of the last time it was done.
Right.
But
Right.
but we're thinking each representative from each of the several states with a small s, commonwealths, or territories must provide their personal bona fides. So if you're there as a man, you got to have your bona fides of who you are.
Right. Right.
I think that will go a long ways on determining whether or not you're who you say you are.
Yeah.
And
Well,
then
I'm
let
sorry to interrupt. I was gonna say, I have a one pager that I can put in the bottom for people to just take a look at. It's only one page, and it's with two witnesses and their seal, and basically it's a declaration of standing and status. And
exactly.
you don't have to change anything, because the standing and status, these gurus trying to make money on freedom pisses me off. All right, listen, people. Your standing and status comes from the original state, the sign and seal of the people. That is your status and you stand on that, and that's your status and standing. The great seal of the original jurisdiction of your state. Okay, mine's Pennsylvania. My flag is blue with two horses looking at each other with a gold crest, and an eagle sits on top with a red banner that says virtue, liberty, and freedom, or whatever. That is my status and standing. That's the crest and the seal and the symbol. We stand on those original states within the republic, with our constitution that the original people put together. That's already been written. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, like Ron said. This is very, very simple stuff to understand. Okay, you don't stand under the revised constitution that's revised with statutes and codes that these attorneys put together. That's all fraud. We're talking about the original. Like Texas, for instance, you were asking John if Texas was part of the original 33 states. Yeah, their original constitution was 1836. So the Texan people can stand upon that original constitution with the republic, not under the republic, with the republic. Okay, and I yield. Go ahead, Ron or John. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
We think that those bona fides must be accepted by 2/3 of those present from their state. So the people from your state have to honor your bona fides to get you through the door. And then at a to be described and prescribed time, because I'm shooting for August. That's when I want. Other people will no doubt want other dates, but and to do that in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
I really do hope we have all but 3 show up too. Maybe even beat your record. And
That'd be awesome.
yes,
Yeah.
wonderful that took some tremendous work to make that happen. I know the amount of work it takes just to work with other people to make Oregon happen. And
Well,
you
what
guys
happened?
did it.
What happened, Ron, was, and I'll be brief and yield back to you. Is
No, don't be brief. Explain it.
Yeah, it is. It's just brief. The sentiment at that time, the mind thinking, the emotion, the feeling, because Barack Obama had just been elected 2 years before that, and so in 2010, you had people rise up and they were ready to get. Oh my Lord! All of a sudden they woke up, and so that helped a lot. I yield back.
Yeah, it did. So the way to get to where we want to be is each state must do as they did when John did it. We think that it takes 5 men or women to do the paperwork, and you got to have the paperwork correct, just like John was saying. You have to do the paperwork properly. You have to establish your status and standing, jurisdiction, and venue. That has to be done. You have to know your lawful place, not legal, lawful place in the system, because we're returning to a specific time, and that time lawfully is between February 14th, 1859 and December 20th, 1860. That's where the most recent original jurisdiction was. We had a complete United States of America functioning, and there was a United States in Washington District of Columbia functioning, and then it broke. We have to return to that time to return to original jurisdiction to make our system have a de jure law form. Otherwise, we're just in some other form of a de facto law form, and it's not going to work. Can I take a short one on de facto and de jure?
Please, go ahead.
I got this from Jen the Liberty Lion, and I'm going to get it wrong, but it'll be close enough that you get the picture. When the king decided to leave and go fight in the Crusades, he left his brother in charge, and he gave his brother the right to be king in his absence. Okay?
Okay.
So he was de facto king, and that's it. The king that left had to come back. And when the king that left and came back, he wasn't king till he found his brother and got it back. His brother was still the de facto king. So when the de jure king meets the de facto king, his brother, and says, John, I'm taking my crown back, it happens. The same thing happens here with us. When the de jure meets the de facto, they fold.
Well, they're
We've
supposed
seen
to.
it.
They're supposed to.
Well, if they don't, then we have a little thing that you can look up also, and that's Athens, Tennessee, 1946.
There you go.
We got the next step.
Yeah, that's it. Let me endpoint this on de facto. I remember. It was after 2012. I spoke to a sheriff's officer where I lived at the time, and we had a short discussion because I wasn't happy at that moment about what was going on, and I said the word de facto, and he turned around and looked at me and went, "De facto." He knew what that meant. I yield.
Yeah, so when I think of de facto, I think of all the DUNS numbers assigned to the corporate entity pretending to be the original de jure state, which I took the liberty to go ahead and post prior to this video. So Go ahead, have at her. Every single Dun and Bradstreet number, which is any company that's ever recognized by Dun and Bradstreet. I think they're effectively using a thing called SAM.gov right now, which is unique identifying numbers, which is a little less transparent. It's a little more hard to find the numbers, but all in all, they're still using numbers. They're assigning numbers to these corporate entities, which are um, acting, because they're acts of treason, they're acting as the original and de jure state. And I yield. Go ahead. Oh, you're.
Yep. So the way I'm looking at this is the United States of America's Constitution, that's America's with apostrophe S, Constitution. Anytime you see Constitution for or Constitution of, think to yourself, they're trying to trick me, because I know that the real one is the United States of America's apostrophe S Constitution, circa 1859 to 1860, because that's when we lost original jurisdiction. Since then, we've been in color of law. So then, to which we are third party beneficiaries to that document. That's who we are. We're mentioned in it twice, I believe. 10th Amendment and 7th Amendment. Everything else, that's a contract between the several states and their employee government, Washington District, United States, Washington District of Columbia. That's who they are. So then when you look at that and you say, okay, I consider myself a party to Oregon's apostrophe S Constitution, because that's where I am. If I was in South Carolina, I would be party to South Carolina's. But so when we, as the Oregon Statewide Jural Assembly, claim to be Article 1, Section 1 of our Constitution, and we did that with the FBI, DOJ, Marshals, Marine Corps, State of Oregon, all caps to everybody, 36 sheriffs, they all knew.
Yeah.
We told them that's who we were, and they had 7, 14, and 21 days to rebut. Nobody rebutted in 30 days. An affidavit of truth or living testimony in the form of an affidavit of truth is fact. So
Right.
that all became fact. This is what they acquiesced to. I'd like to read this. It's really short.
Sure, go ahead.
All natural rights are inherent in the people. We declare that all men, when they form a social compact, are equal in right, that all power is inherent in the people, and all free governments are founded on their authority and instituted for their peace, safety, and happiness. And they have at all times a right to alter, reform, or abolish the government in such manner as they may think proper. Therefore, with Article 4, Section 1 of the United States of America's Constitution, which is full faith and credit, every one of the several states and commonwealths and territories has that document in their documents, except for Delaware is the only one I was told that didn't put in that paragraph, that clause.
Interesting, because the United States original corporate lowercase t, the United States, that was formed in, I think they actually formed in 1801, but it took them until 1871 to draft their bylaws for their charter and actually pull off the masquerading as the United States government. They were actually drafted, their articles were drafted out of Delaware. Did you know that?
I did.
You
I
knew that, John?
Yes, I do know that.
Yeah.
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
Interesting
so that's
to
probably
know.
why, because they're actually drafted up Delaware. True story, you know.
Yep.
It's really interesting the level of fraud that went into this, man. I tell you what, it's like that stylization, whew, it's what did us in, you know, because they knew the American people were salt of the earth people, farmers, you know, just regular old folk, man, common folk, you know. They didn't understand the difference in the stylization of writing like an APA certified writer would, or at that time a lawyer or an attorney would, because it's very specific. Even today, with these graduates and all these, you know, people being indoctrinated in these universities, they don't know how to read. It's true. They don't know the difference in the stylization, and they've been bamboozled. You know, what did Twain say? It's easier to convince somebody that that they've been then. It's easier to convince somebody that they're fooled or that they've been fooled. What is that again? How does he say it? You know what I'm talking about.
Yes, it's easier to fool a man a second time than to convince him was fooled the first time.
That's it. Thank you.
Yeah.
But the people reading nowadays, and it would be easy to convince anybody of this from lower school grade now, is reading like, what was it, Jane and Dick and Jane.
Yes.
You know, from Dick and Jane, you can read out loud or in your mind, but it's different to comprehend and understand what Mary's saying exactly.
Yeah, like if I were to say the word two or the word four, you'd actually have to know if I was saying TWO or TO or TOO or FOUR or FOUR. You know what I mean? It's just,
right.
Unless you're looking at the paper, you're not going to know the damn difference. And unless you know the difference, you don't know what to look for. And this is how they were able to bamboozle the people and pull this whole fraud off, man.
You see it all the time. Yeah, you see it all the time.
Yeah. Yep. It's the same like when you know, in kindergarten, for all the people that don't know that the word school is a German word, Schul, that means detention. You know, they're starting these little kindergartners right off early. You know, okay, little Johnny, when I call your name, say here. So that when you go to court and the judge calls your name, you stand up and say, "Oh, I'm here," because you've been programmed through school, detention, to jump up and acquiesce to general jurisdiction, and you don't know the damn difference, and say, "Hey, I'm here by special appearance to challenge jurisdiction because you're a fraud." See, the people don't know that. So it's just such a mind game. It's a mind game. People, they are playing, they're word wizards, and they're playing mind games with you. And we're here to wake you up.
It's even identified MK Ultra, and they've been doing it very well.
Yeah, yeah, it's been going on for quite a while. And, you know, I just want to say that the FBI and the CIA has absolutely no congressional authority, and that the Congress reassembled and reconvened under the barrel of a gun under Lincoln is fraud. And everything since Lincoln is fraud, and fraud vitiates all that. Literally means every single act of treason since Lincoln is fraud, which means
you froze up.
You froze up, Mary.
Yep. Bandwidth or something. Come on. Unfreeze.
Mary, can you hear us? Must not like what we're talking about.
I wonder if they can do that. Somebody told me that the earthquakes in Turkey were a punishment, and they were dealt out. And it wasn't.
I've seen writing on that, and I don't know for sure. I've seen the storylines.
Do you think they have the power to make earthquakes?
I think the technology is there for them to do about
tornadoes.
Anything. Yeah,
they do not want to let go of this. They do not intend on losing here. And we do not intend giving it back to them.
And then the bullets started flying, and then he jumps out of the car, and he's got both his hands up, And he got out of the car, and he had his hands in the air. He's like, just shoot me then. This is what you want, to shoot me. And they did. They shot him dead with his hands in the air, and I saw it. I swear to God. He was just walking with his hands in the air. And they shot him. And they shot him dead, and then after he was down on the ground, they shot him 3 more times.